My name is Dr. Janelle Ott. I am the instructor of double reeds at Angelo State University and instructor of bassoon at Abilene Christian, Hardin-Simmons, and McMurray Universities. I also have a doctorate of musical arts from University of North Texas, and I taught privately in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as well as in more rural areas for a little bit over 10 years. I moved to Texas in 2009 and I've been teaching ever since. So today I'm here to talk to you about tenor clef, and specifically, what is it? Do you need to learn it? Why do you need to learn it? And how do you learn it? This is a video I'm intending for both band directors and students. So either one can use this video as many times as you want. Please share as much as you would like. I would like good information to be available. Okay, so what is tenor clef? Well, tenor clef is a kind of musical clef, just like bass clef is a kind of musical clef. So most people who play bassoon by now know what bass clef is. Bass clef is what we call an F clef, because the clef is written in such a way to show you where the note F is. If you look, we've got these two dots, both on either side of this second line from the top, and if you put a note on that line, that note is F. Some of you have also seen treble clef, which is the clef that we would use for the higher instruments. If you play piano, that's often the clef you read your right hand in. Treble clef is actually what we call a G clef, because the part of the clef that has the most circles is over the line that G is written on. So tenor clef is a musical clef, just like bass clef and treble clef, but it's what we call a C clef. So in tenor clef, where the two backward C's come together, they're showing you this line that is normally F on bass clef, and that note is now C, and specifically C that's normally the C above the staff in bass clef. Why do composers write in tenor clef? Lots of reasons. The reason you're going to hear most often is because they are writing higher notes and don't want to write as many ledger lines. Supposedly, reading something in tenor clef is going to make it easier for you to read as a musician because you're not reading ledger lines. However, that's not always true. So the answer that is most helpful to most musicians is that you need to learn how to read tenor clef because composers write in tenor clef, because they do. They always have a reason. The reason may or may not make sense, but it still doesn't change the fact that we have music written in tenor clef and we need to learn how to read it. So, do you need to learn how to read tenor clef? If you are in a larger school, and specifically a school that is using the UIL etudes for all region and all state auditions, you do need to learn how to read tenor clef, because the all region etudes have tenor clef in them every single year. If you are a smaller school and you use the ATSSB etudes, those tend not to have tenor clef in them, or not very much. So if you're using ATSSB etudes, you may be able to get away with not ever needing to learn tenor clef as long as you never play bassoon outside of high school, because once you continue to play bassoon outside of high school, tenor clef is just everywhere and you just kind of need to know how to read it. So I would recommend that you learn it. It's good for your brain. It's a new skill. I don't think it's ever a bad idea to have an additional skill that you have developed. So, okay, that's why. Also, I might add that if you are using the UIL prescribed music list, most of the Division I solos for bassoon go into tenor clef, and some of them are in tenor clef the entire time. So it comes back to you twice a year if you're in high school. Okay, so how do you learn tenor clef? Or how do you teach your students to play in tenor clef? As a band director, you have two options. The first option is that you can go in and write in all of the note names for your students. The second option is that you can make them learn how to read tenor clef. I do not recommend asking your students to write in all of the note names by themselves, because they are going to make a mistake at some point. You as a band director are used to doing transpositions, and you know more about music than most of your students. That's why you're a band director. I trust band directors to be able to catch their mistakes more than I trust high school students to catch their own mistakes. What I find is once you start writing in note names, you stop looking at the notes altogether and you turn off the critical part of your brain that is asking, does this make sense? So if you have a high school student that is just learning how to read tenor clef and they want to write in some of the note names to help themselves, that's fine, just as long as they're not writing in all of the note names. I recommend to my students that they can write in 2 notes per measure. You can do more than that, but there needs to be at least 1 note in every single measure that you do not write in for tenor clef. Otherwise, that critical part of your brain just shuts off, and when you make a mistake, not if, but when, it's unlikely that you're going to catch it, and then you're practicing your mistake, and it makes it a lot harder to fix going on. So, if you have decided that you are going to teach your bassoonists how to read tenor clef, how do you do it? Well, first of all, I would recommend you check out musical flashcards. There are a number of musical flashcard apps that you can access on your phone that will help you start to recognize tenor clef. If you don't do that, you don't need to do that. This is the next approach, and this is the approach that my students get. First of all, make sure that they understand how tenor clef works, so they understand which note is C, at least. Then let's go to an etude that we have for all region this year in UIL. Okay, so this is etude number 20. It starts in tenor clef. It stays in tenor clef quite a bit. What I'd recommend you do is take a small chunk at a time, maybe 2 measures. In this case of this opening phrase, maybe you can get away with 4 measures, but it needs to be a small, discrete amount of music. You go through and you say all of the note names in order. It's okay if you're slow. Get all the way through it. If it's giving you a lot of trouble and you're new to this, maybe say the note names again. Then, immediately after saying the note names, you play the notes that are written, and it's important at this point that you play the correct notes. The rhythm and the tempo are not important at all, even a little bit. Your job is to play the correct notes. Once you start to get more comfortable playing the correct notes, you can start to work your rhythm and your tempo into the piece, but the notes need to come to you first. The other thing that's really important for you to understand is that you are going to feel very stupid when you start reading tenor clef, and it is going to last for a while. It's part of the learning process. I promise that every time you read tenor clef, you will get a little bit better at it, but it will take a while before you start to realize that you are improving at reading tenor clef. And often my students become good at reading tenor clef before they realize that they even know how to do it. So I'll be having a lesson and I can tell they're just waiting until they mess up, and they just keep not messing up. And then they have to admit to themselves that they sort of know what they're doing. One last parting thing for me to mention. If you're doing the UIL All Region Etudes, there are 2 books that get used for bassoon. There's the Mildy Concert Studies. This is the book that's being used this year. And there are the Weisenborn Studies. This is the book that's been used for the past 3 years. The etudes for the Weisenborn Studies tend to look something like that. The thing for you to know is that any year that the Mildy Concert Studies are being used, there will be much more tenor clef than the Weisenborn years. All of the Mildy studies have a lot of tenor clef, and they go back and forth between tenor clef and bass clef frequently. So any year that you have the Mildy Concert Studies, you can expect to be reading a lot of tenor clef. I think that knowing that going in makes the process a little bit less scary. So if you have any questions, I hope you'll reach out to me. You can find my contact information on my website. That website is janelleottbassoon.com. That's JANELLEOTTBASSOON.com. You can also reach me via email through my Angelo State University website and my Angelo State University office phone. Good luck to you. I know you can do it. Good luck.